From crease to crease and corner to corner, Bettor Hockey Now is NHL fantasy and betting done better. Step into the dot for Bettor Hockey Now on the Bettor Sports Network.
Welcome into episode 5 of Bettor Hockey Now on the Bettor Sports Network. I'm Adam Bernard, and my line mates, as always, for today are Mr. Anthony Rivera, Mr. Christopher Morais. Fellas, how are we doing on this lovely Tuesday afternoon?
Yeah, having a good Tuesday. I can't complain. Getting to talk hockey, even though the season's over, is always a good thing. So I'm very excited for what we have planned for the audience today.
It's Tuesday with no hockey, so it's pain. But this is step one in the 12-week process until we get to training camp and something can be meaningful again.
And don't worry, there are definitely things that'll help us get our fix between now and then. But yeah, we are starting to be in the dog days of the hockey calendar. Tuesday, normally a busy day on the NHL slate. Not for a few weeks, it won't be. But today, what we're going to do is we touched a little bit on the 2024 Stanley Cup odds last time. We're going to go do a little bit deeper dive here, but we broke them down into divisions and ranked them where, the NHL thinks they'll kind of finish within their own division, where the books think they'll finish within their own divisions prior to free agency and the draft coming up next week. Free agency kicking off July 1st. Talking about that before we hit record today, I don't like NHL free agency being on a Saturday. That's a lost day for me. Like, it's got to be a weekday where not much work is getting done, and we're all waiting on Elliot Friedman tweets and NHL Network, and it's just on a Saturday. It's really tough to just. For some people, it's easier to sit there and do it all day on a Saturday, but for others, it's just I can't. Not a summer Saturday. I can't be on the couch. Well, I'll follow on my phone.
I'll tell you this right now, though. It's way more exciting than MLB free agency, where they just have you wait months and months before some of these players even sign. Sometimes in the NHL, it's just, it goes real quickly in the, first hour and a half. A lot of players start signing.
You can catch Anthony over on the Subway to Shea podcast with all your Mets talk there. And it's been quite the year for the Mets, hasn't it? We don't have to get into that right now.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the Atlantic and Metropolitan Divisions today. We'll also talk a little Matvei Michkov, a little update there. Apparently, he's got a preferred destination. But first, let's kick things off here with the Atlantic Division. And when we take a look at the odds, no shock here. The Bruins plus 800, Toronto plus 900. Those should be the top two teams in that division. I know Boston had the early exit, and Toronto in the second round at the hands of the Panthers. But nonetheless, 135 and 111 points speak for themselves. Florida ranks third at plus 1,400. Defending conference champions. That makes sense. And then we in the middle of the pack here, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to talk about those three teams: 7 and 8, Detroit and Montreal at plus 7,500 to win the Cup. Montreal at plus 25,000. There's a zero missing there, but nonetheless. It's going to be the three teams I want to talk about here. Tampa Bay at plus 1,600. They finished in third place this year. Do we think the Lightning we know they're kind of on a decline, but is this going to be a decline where they may miss the playoffs next year? Or do we think we have another year or two of that roster of being a playoff contender, but not necessarily a championship contender?
No, I mean, decline's a strong word for Tampa Bay, right? They still have a very elite goalie in Andrei Vasilevsky. I think their defensive core is still pretty good. They can keep up. And I mean, Nikita Kucherov is still Nikita Kucherov. Same thing for Steven Stamkos. I think Braden Point is just getting warmed up as to what we can see from him. This lineup is good enough in a really weak Atlantic division. They can compete. And I'm not going to give as much credit to the Ottawa Senators because I still think that team is, who knows what happens with DeBrincat, who knows their goaltending situation defensively. Yes, they brought in Jacob Chikrin, but how is this team going to work together? I don't know. Same story for the Buffalo Sabres. They are fun to watch, but defensively they are not very good. Who knows who starts in goal for them? So I don't love those teams there. Detroit, Montreal, we forget about them. Florida, I mean, I don't think they win the division. Right. So to me, it's a 2-horse race between Toronto and Boston. I'm interested to see what happens in Boston with Patrice Bergeron and everything else. Are they going to repeat 135 points next season? No. Same story for the Toronto Maple Leafs. How much better is this team going to get? We know that their cap situation is what it is. Is that core four going to stick together? I don't know. So I'm probably just going to play it safe if I'm a betting person and go with the Boston Bruins because I just don't love anything else. If I'm wrong, great. If I'm right, well, I got gas money.
I agree with Chris on Boston. I think that they're probably hands down going to take that division. It probably won't be as good as it was this season with the epic season that they had, but you got to, consider 135 points that they had last year. It may come down, definitely, but they're definitely the class of the division. I'm always surprised at how much the Leafs are always so up there, considering their struggles every year in the postseason. So, it'll be interesting to see where they fall come end of the season. I feel like Florida, considering that they went to the Stanley Cup, I would probably have them at 2, but that's just me personally. I think that they should be, above Toronto, even with how the season ended this year, and the difference in points. What is that about? 9 point difference there, 9-10 point difference there. I'd be interesting to see if the Sabres can make a jump up this season. They finished the year pretty strong, going 7-2 to end the season. They just missed by a point, not getting into the postseason. So, like Chris said, they're probably going to be a very fun team. And the Lightning, you have Vasilevsky. You're always going to be in at least an opportunity to make it to the postseason. And they played pretty well against Toronto in the postseason. So, anything can happen. So I don't say Tampa's definitely out just yet. I feel more confident in them than I would in Pittsburgh right now.
So maybe I jumped the gun on the decline comment just a tad because they also have played a ton of hockey over the past few years, and that can take its toll. And sometimes that results, that manifests itself in not early playoff exits because there's just a lot of wear and tear on the body. So yes, the Tampa I think does have another year or two of a window, but again, and of the odds in there, I mean that's probably them or Florida are the ones I like. Toronto to me makes sense where they are just because they're regular season juggernauts. We know they just roll through, they steam through the regular season. They just don't know how to get it done in the playoffs. So games 1 through 82, you can safely assume that Toronto's going to win a lot. It's just the playoffs. They don't know. It's baby steps for them. They got out of the first round finally. Now they got to get out of the second round. So, a little bit at a time. The Sabres, you said they had the strong close of the season. They were just outside the wild card picture there. They're looking to carry that momentum into this year defensively. Chris mentioned that they need some help there for sure, but they can be a team that can maybe sneak in. We'll see what happens when we get division odds there. And then Ottawa, they were last year's darlings, in the offseason. Everybody thought, oh, they're going to sneak in and take a wild card spot. That didn't really happen. And, like they acquired Chikrin at the end of the season. So, the jury's still out on Ottawa for me. Let's see how their offseason goes, especially with, DeBrincat. So we're not knowing what his future is going to be there. So that takes a look at the Atlantic Division. Now let's take a look at the Metropolitan odds. And as you can see, the Devils and the Hurricanes get similar odds there. So they're both projected to be top 2. Rangers make sense at 3 for me off of this season. Then you got a little cluster here between Pittsburgh at plus 3,000, the Islanders at plus 5, and the Capitals at plus 6. And then Philly and Columbus at plus 15,000, plus 20,000. Those two spots make sense. Neither of those teams are going to be making any drastic moves up in the standings. Although, did you see the news with the Flyers? And they're bringing back the, the burnt orange look, the old classic Flyer jersey look, which there are some jerseys in sports that should not ever be touched. The Raiders are one of them. You can pretty much point to any of the original 6 teams classic looks, but the Flyers jersey, as much as I can't stand them, that I love that orange jersey.
Yeah.
At least they look good. That's about as much as we're going to see from that team. That entire, I mean, no disrespect to the Penguins, to any other team below that, after the Flyers, the Capitals, the Blue Jackets, like they're just going to be there and exist, and that's fine. And okay, cool. It's interesting to see where the market has kind of put the New Jersey Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes, because in my book, like the Carolina Hurricanes are a really good hockey team. They ran into a really hot Sergei Bobrovsky and a Matthew Tkachuk that just decided to take over. But Carolina is a strong defensive team. Let's not forget, they got to where they got without Max Pacioretty and without Andrei Svechnikov. You were missing a ton of offense in that lineup, not to mention, right, Teuvo Teravainen was hurt. You're basically missing 3 of the top 6, and you still made it to where you did. So that is a good hockey team. We don't know what happens with Max Pacioretty if they decide to bring him back. Who knows? We'll figure that out. But a healthy Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho continues to get better. We saw some guys kind of come up and do better. Seth Jarvis got a lot better this year. They still have, to me, I feel, one of the better goalies in that division, and Freddie Anderson. He's been great since leaving Toronto. Shocker. So he's playing on a good team. As long as he's healthy, and again, that's like the thing that we can say with every team, as long as they are healthy, they can make a significant run again and possibly to the Stanley Cup final.
Well, both Anderson and Antti Ranta become unrestricted free agents. I wonder if that may be a little bit of concern when it comes to the books. I'm surprised that they have the Devils, and you all know that I'm a huge Devils fan. I'm surprised that they have them at the top right now, considering they do not have a contract yet with Timo Meier. And, the goalie situation is in flux at the moment, right? They don't have a, lockdown set top of the line goalie at the moment. Maybe they can make a trade for a Hellebuck. Would they be interested in an Anderson or Ranta at some point? I don't know where they go with that. Are they going to go with, with the kid, with Akira Schmid in net? So that's going to be interesting. I do wonder about the Rangers and with the bringing in of the new head coach and Peter Laviolette, if that changes anything come close to the season, the experience that he has and what he can do with that team. I mean, they were up 2-0 on the Devils, pretty much destroying the Devils for the first 2 games of that series, looking like they would steamroll all the way to the, the conference finals. I wonder if, Laviolette can bring out the fire that was missing towards the rest of those, games in that series. And maybe he's the guy that they need to take them to the Stanley Cup. He's got the experience. He's won a cup with the Hurricanes. So interesting to see if that changes with the Rangers. The rest of the line going down. Obviously, the Penguins fine where they are. Islanders, I don't know what they're doing moving forward. The Capitals, will get into them and their draft situation coming up. And yeah, the plus 15, what is that? 15,000 for the Philadelphia Flyers because they got the New Jersey. So kudos to them.
Yeah, just slightly edge out the Blue Jackets because of the fashion there. When we're looking at the top 3, I completely agree with Chris on the Hurricanes. And if you think about the playoff season the year before that, they faced the Rangers in the second round without Freddie Anderson. So they didn't even have their fair shake that year. And the Rangers were also the Rangers were very hot 2 years ago in the playoffs. Shesterkin was stopping everything. To your point about Laviolette, the biggest concern he's going to need to do is figure out how to get that back end generating offense again. The Rangers, that was a very strong point for them 2 years ago. Last year, not as good. Hopefully Laviolette can figure that out. When you're looking at the top, I do agree Carolina should be a slight favorite over to the Devils, but they're not. They're even. The Devils did, they impressed against the Rangers those last 4 games. I mean, there was some of that was the Rangers not showing up. And then even against, in the second round against Carolina, obviously didn't go well, but hey, they got the experience now and they're ready to poised to take that jump. And I guess they're assuming Meier is going to sign there. I mean, so far things sound good. Things can change, but it seems like both sides are very happy with how things are going. And, he probably will be a Garden Stater soon enough. When you look at that 4, 5, 6, Pittsburgh, Islanders, Capitals, do you think that's the right order right there, or would you jumble those 3 a little bit?
There's no difference to me. Like, the Penguins are an aging team. I don't see them getting better. We saw them. This is a team that could have made the playoffs and they couldn't get 1 point against Columbus or Chicago. So I don't see them getting any better, right? Evgeny Malkin is due to get hurt at some point. Chris Letang, the same thing. Crosby, let's hope he continues to stay healthy. So this is not a team that's on the up. They can only go down from where they are. Do they finish below the Islanders? Who knows? The Islanders have no offense. They are a back heavy team. So as good as Ilya Sorokin will be as far as that team will go, and I think maybe the Capitals don't get enough love, but it's just because they're very inconsistent, right? They had John Carlson out for a long time. I still think they have the best goal scorer to ever play hockey on their team, so you can't discredit him. The health of Nicholas Backstrom obviously is something to take of concern, but again, if they are healthy, right? And if Darcy Kemper can figure out how to play hockey again, then sure, maybe they can make a run to a playoff spot. I feel like they just ran out of gas last season, right? They also acquired Rasmus Sandin, so that gives them a little bit more, jump in that offense, helps them out on the back end. But I think where they are is fine. It would just be nitpicking as to who would be ahead of it. It's all the same.
I agree. I mean, all three are pretty much, for the reasons you stated. The Islanders great defensively, but no offense. The Penguins are an aging team. Washington's an aging team, like you said. The Penguins to me are like the New England Patriots in peak Brady era. You can't count them out until they're officially counted out. And and it's amazing to think how the whole course of the playoffs could have been different if they could have beaten one crappy team down the stretch and gotten that last spot away from Florida. And then who the heck knows what happens. But I think when you look at those, I mean, if you're looking for long odds, I mean, I would throw a couple of bucks on Pittsburgh plus 3,000 just, for nostalgic purposes. But Carolina or the Rangers, to me, are where the value's at there. I think the Devils can definitely make a run this year. Again, free agency and draft pending. I don't know if I'm a believer in sometimes you got to get there and lose before you can win. That old story about when the Oilers finally ended the Islanders dynasty and the Oilers are walking down the tunnel to the bus, and they're thinking it's going to be this, raucous locker room celebration, 4 Stanley Cups in a row. And it was a bunch of middle-aged men sitting with ice packs and just drinking beers like they're just hanging out in the backyard, because that's what it takes to get there. So I think learning those lessons along the way can make a difference. And I think the Devils are in that mode right now. To me, it's still Carolina or the Rangers, and we'll see what happens with the Rangers, but to me, Carolina is the favorite there. Now, we did talk a little Washington Capitals, and some news today, rumors we'll call it, for Matvei Michkov, who some have as the second best prospect in the draft, but then everything that comes along with the Russian contracts and the KHL, when he's going to come over, that has had him falling down the draft boards. When we did our little 5-pick mock draft the other day, Christopher was very happy to get him at 5, but there was a story today that he is preferring the Capitals, and that if he's still there at 8, that the Capitals would definitely take him. So when we take a look at the odds that are affected by that, let me just pull that up here for a second. But what do you think, just in general, when players start not necessarily dictating, but like saying, "Oh, I prefer to go here," "Oh, I prefer to go there," or "This is where I want to be"? I don't think that really helps anybody, because if you truly want to go to Washington, what you just did is took away any leverage they would have to move up to potentially get you. Teams know that, okay, that's where you want to go. If Washington wants to make a move up to get him, they're going to pay a premium now. Now, maybe it's a smokescreen. Who knows?
Well, that's where, Chris, what do you think then because you wanted him, you would take him for Montreal. Does this kind of change your thought process, knowing now that he would rather and prefer to go to Washington? Does that change your draft strategy? Do you think of a trade with Washington now to maybe get some assets from them if they want to get Michkov?
I would not. I'm still sold on him being at 5, unless he publicly comes out and says, "Hey, I'm not showing up." Right, kind of the Eric Lindros route. Then you say, "Okay, fine. Then we'll explore something else." But I think for what it is right now, is people are finding it exceptionally hard, right, as the article said, to meet with him, and that's a key part for all these scouts and GMs and whatnot, to ask these almost meaningless questions to rookies to kind of try to define who they are and whatnot. But again, I'm gonna die on this hill that I died on last, and that is he is of pure skill. So you know what? If I want you to be here and look at all these guys around that we got and where we can end up, like you're gonna be fine here, kid. Don't worry. Let's not forget Montreal is a wonderful city to be in. Players have said this repeatedly. They want to be here, but living with the pressure that comes with it and everything else is definitely something. I understand wanting to go to Washington. He could maybe potentially play with Alexander Ovechkin, and that is something. If you're a Russian, superstar as he is expected to be, he definitely grew up watching Ovechkin play. So yeah, I understand him saying, "Hey, I want to go there," but unless he comes out and says, "I will not sign here and I will not show up," or whatnot, I think this is just trying to get teams off their guard. And again, I want the upside and the skill. I'll deal with how long it takes him to get here. I'll deal with his team, right? What is it? SKS St. Petersburg, I think he plays in. I'll deal with all that afterwards. If I'm gonna take a risk and that's the guy who's left, sure, I'll do it because I don't think after that, I to answer your question, I would not trade back in the draft. No, I'm not gonna do it.
Okay, so we should flash up the odds there for a second for the number 5 overall pick. Michkov at plus 125, David Reinbacher at plus 210. Is still Michkov the way to go, or do you think maybe you throw a few pennies on Reinbacher and that might be the first and he'd be the first defenseman taken there? Do you see Montreal maybe doing that, or is it just too much talent for them to pass up if he's sitting there?
I want the talent, man. This kid looks like he can play. So why and again, don't forget he's under contract with that team. I'm sure somebody came up to him and said, "Hey, you're not talking to anybody. Like you're under contract. This is how it goes." And fine, he probably doesn't want to risk anything that he's done. It's no different than, an NDA or a non-compete in the real world, right? So I don't think he's playing hardball here. I think maybe this article is a little bit of a stretch trying to, generate a buzz on something, but of course he would want to play with Alexander Ovechkin. I get that. And of course people have told him, back home, "Hey, we don't talk to other teams who send people to come over." So yeah, it's a risk for teams who say, "Hey, I can't judge his character. So how about we judge him on his skill, which we all have access to?" And everyone is pretty consensus on that, saying he is the second best prospect in the draft. So that's what I'm banking on. If I can't move up in the draft, if I'm Montreal, I'm not moving back. And that's the guy that I want. That's the guy with the most skill in a rebuild that Montreal is going through. He'll be ready when that team is ready to take off.
Yeah,
Now, when we look,
outside of him, playing with Ovechkin, you're talking about the Montreal Canadiens, who are the New York Yankees of hockey. I mean, the Stanley Cups they have, the history that they have. Like you said, it's a beautiful town, a beautiful city to play in. I would be shocked if the Canadiens drafted him and he was like, "Hey, no, I don't want to play here." So, I think that if any team, let's say instead, San Jose were the ones to go after him, which we had talked about last week. I think that would be a little bit different. But you talk about the Canadiens and the history and the cups and all that, and that's probably the right move for him, where he'll be like, "Yeah, I'll be ready to play here."
you do, and again, the Montreal point is a good one. If it's Columbus sitting there at 5 or Winnipeg, no disrespect, but let's be real, that's not exactly a place that a young guy in his 20s wants to go live. Is Central Ohio or Central Manitoba for that matter. But a city like Montreal, which is an international capital, we'll call it, but also like the point of the pressure there are guys that thrive on the pressure. They want it on their shoulders, and then there are guys that are like, "No, I'd rather go do my job and then still be able to go grocery shopping and not get asked why I passed instead of shot 2 nights ago." So let's see who he is. It would be kind of like, and if he does go to Washington, it would be appropriate because it would either be a passing of the baton from Ovechkin to him by the time he gets here, or because just the marketing of having him with Ovechkin, I can see the KHL finding being okay with, like, all right, we can let you out a year early if that's the difference between your career and Ovi's overlapping and not overlapping. So maybe he gets here a year earlier if it's with the Capitals. Who knows? Just to go take a look at how it affected the odds for number 4, because we did agree it's obviously Bedard at 1, Fantilli at 2, and then Leo Carlson looks almost like a lock at 3. So the Sharks at 4 right now. William Smith now minus 140. So that kind of tells you what you need to. Heck, even Leo Carlson has better odds than Michkov right now. So maybe that, maybe they're saying they know San Jose is not necessarily scared off, but he's not necessarily towards the top of their list. And then you look down at the 5 pick. We put that up earlier. Michkov at plus 125 and Reinbacher at plus 210. I don't know if you're really looking at anybody else besides those two at that pick anyway. So we'll see what happens there. Now, the draft just a little over a week away here. And Bettor Hockey Now, we will definitely have you covered for any sort of big news from that, any sort of, big trades. We're going to have you covered. You're going to catch us on Twitter. You got all the Twitter handles right there on the screen. Pucking Thoughts for me, Ant Rivera 86, and Fuzzy Chris for Chris. And don't forget, we put those odds up on the screen, courtesy of FanDuel, up to $2,500. No sweat first bet by going to fantasyalarm.com/FanDuel. Join the FanDuel Sportsbook and deposit $10 or more. Place your first bet up to $2,500. Get up to $2,500 in bonus bets back if you lose. So seems like a pretty good deal there. But any closing thoughts here before we wrap up episode 5 of Bettor Hockey Now on the Bettor Sports Network? I could put you guys on the spot there. Anything?
I'm not ready to continue to hear about why. Like, I don't want to. All these draft questions that they get about all these things that, like, you always hear prospects talk about the questions that they're asked, and I'm like, really? Like, these are the type of intangibles that you're trying to like determine, and I'm like, cool, I get that, but here are tangible things I can see and I can quantify with analytics, which is goals, which is scoring, assists, shots, and all that. I care about my player being able to do that. Character and whatnot you can work on, I guess, with a strong leadership group. And you can say, hey, everybody fits in, and strong leadership groups. Look at the Boston Bruins with everything that was going on there and how that leadership took over. And oh, by the way, they also set a record in points per season. So good leadership can haul that in and can control it. You cannot teach skill, and Michkov has skill. Would he love to play with Evgeny Kuznetsov and Alex Ovechkin? Sure. That is, there are great Russian players, and Montreal doesn't have a ton of those. So I understand that angle of it. But to me, man, like, at this point, you're looking for reasons not to, right? Don't tell me why you can't do something. Tell me why you can. That's the motto. And I want people to tell me why they can draft Michkov at 5. And it's because of the skill, and it's because of everything that he can bring. I want the upside. Go big or go home here, right?
Are you going to get the white or the red Canadiens jersey?
Always the red. Always the red. That's right.
Yeah.
It's always. I already bought. No, I didn't buy the Shane Wright one last year. I waited off on that one. So maybe, I might wait a little bit longer on the Michkov one this year.
The problem with white jerseys is they look sharp, but like, you can't wear them if there's a possibility of any food being eaten, especially at a game. It's just tight quarters. You're getting nachos. It's just nobody wants like a yellow stain or like a red stain on a nice white jersey. I can't. I got to go dark most of the time.
Always dark.
I will say though that I did like the white Winter Classic jersey that they had with the I think it was like the light blue stripe and the red stripe. I did like those for the Montreal
I own
Canadiens.
that one. Yes.
Yeah.
And it is.
If I was to get a white one, it would be that
dirty. It is dirty. So
point.
All of that has been confirmed.
That's the jersey, you sit at home, you put it on, you wear it, relax and watch a game with. The other one you take to the game, and if you get stains on it, whatever. But I definitely don't wear my white Devils jersey when I go to games because I don't want to make a mess out of that thing. But yeah, I will say and I know Chris definitely wants him, but if they don't take him and he falls 6, 7, I wonder if, I think it was Arizona or the Flyers, try to, take advantage of the Capitals, who definitely want him now that they know that he wants to play there. But him going to the Canadiens with the history and all that stuff, it just makes too much sense. And Chris needs that jersey for sure.
Someone get Andre Markov on the phone here to do some recruiting or something. I don't know, some inside job. I'm not saying tampering, but just pigeon mail.
Andrei Markov can't call me Michkov just to say hi, see how things are going with the draft process.
Let him know where he stayed right outside the complex, where the good communities are in the C section of Brossard. Just a regular conversation.
No hockey talk. We're not selling the city of Montreal at all. Just, maybe he's got some food recommendations in case he's in town with another team or something like that.
Gotcha.
Or, places you would want to rent an Airbnb if you're in town for an extended period, things like that, just trying to look out for the kid.
That's it. That's all he wants.
On that note, we're going to wrap things up here on Bettor Hockey Now for episode 5. I would love to thank my starting lineup studio audience. We got Adam Oates, circa Capitals era, Pavel Bure. Figure we got the Caps in a Russian winger. I figured they would go together. Patrick Waugh, for my buddy Chris over here. And then, of course, Mark Messier representing the Metropolitan Division. Sorry, Anthony, no Devils allowed in this room. But
no, I got them all hanging out back here. I got all the bobbleheads here hanging out. So
yeah, you got the Devils' presence covered. It's never going to be on the West Coast offices of Bettor Sports Network, that's for sure. But for episode 5 of Bettor Hockey Now, for Christopher Morais and Anthony Rivera, I'm Adam Bernard. We'll be back with you soon here on Bettor Hockey Now.
Bettor Hockey Now is on the Bettor Sports Network.